So obviously the most dangerous place, not just in Washington, D.C., but I think in the known universe, is between Chuck Schumer and a camera. And he gave a great performance yesterday, as always. His rage was focused almost entirely on Republicans' decision not to permit new witnesses in this stage of the trial. They already had their witnesses during the initial impeachment investigation. Then they voted on impeachment, so now they're just adjudicating the evidence. Now, because they're desperate, because they didn't get him on anything, Democratic senators want to pretend that witnesses were never called in the first place. Here's Chuck Schumer.
The McConnell resolution will result in a rush trial with little evidence in the dark of night. Literally, the dark of night. If the president is so confident in his case, if Leader McConnell is so confident the president did nothing wrong, why don't they want the case to be presented in broad daylight? On something as important as impeachment, the McConnell resolution is nothing short of a national disgrace. This will go down, this resolution, as one of the darker moments in the Senate history, perhaps one of even the darkest.
One of the darkest moments in Senate history, that the Senate is conducting an impeachment trial in almost exactly the same way they conducted the impeachment trial of Bill Clinton 20 years ago. One of the darkest moments in Senate history. Other dark moments in Senate history. You've got the caning of Charles Sumner, the senator who was almost killed in an altercation about the Civil War. You've got Democratic Senator Theodore Bilbo giving one of the longest filibusters in Senate history to stop passage of an anti-lynching law. That was a pretty dark moment, I guess. You've got a number of senators over the years who were censured and even expelled for treason, for being involved in coup d'etat against the government. Those seem like pretty dark moments in Senate history. Following the Constitution and conducting an impeachment trial doesn't seem like the darkest moment ever, but Senator Schumer is given to hyperbole. Senator Schumer wants witnesses. The trouble for Senator Schumer, this is the trouble for all these guys who have been around a long time in politics. The trouble here is that Chuck Schumer is on the record from the Clinton impeachment, which was a little over 20 years ago, explaining why there is no reason after the House has investigated and impeached to have any more testimony from witnesses during the Senate trial.
Let me say, this idea that they didn't have to call witnesses in the House and they should call them in the Senate doesn't make sense. You call witnesses before a grand jury and you call witnesses before a trial. So there were some on my side, I was not among them, but some on my side who argued strongly that they ought to call witnesses, and they resisted it every step of the way. There has not been a good explanation why 60,000 pages of testimony was good enough for the House, but isn't good enough for the Senate.
This is the downside of cameras, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer has never had a thought that he hasn't put on a television camera. And the trouble with that is now we can look back. Look, there's a lot of hypocrisy that's going around on this impeachment questions. Mostly on the left, but a little bit on the right too, a little bit with Republicans too, even with nonpartisans, or what you might call civil libertarians like Alan Dershowitz, who is a lifelong Democrat lawyer who happens to now be on Trump's legal team, but only in a limited way to defend the Constitution. Alan Dershowitz said during the Clinton impeachment that there was not a particularly strong legal requirement for impeachment. In other words, you didn't have to commit a narrow definition of a crime in order to be impeached. He's now changed his mind on this, and he was asked about the difference of opinion. And at least Alan Dershowitz, to his credit, came out and said, oh yeah, I changed my mind. I know more now than I do then. I'm a scholar. I'm a Harvard professor. That what we do is we learn things over time, and I was wrong, and I own it. At least Alan Dershowitz is owning it. The rest of these guys don't want to own it. Chuck Schumer just wants to evade the question. Hey, Michael Knowles here. And the fact is, a life of cigars and scotch does not come cheap. So please be sure to subscribe to the Daily Wire on YouTube, because I depend heavily on your support to continue this wonderful lib-triggering life. Thanks.